Hey everyone, and welcome to the first ever episode of the React Universe on air. Today, I'm joined by Jack Herrington and Simon Green, and we're talking about React and React Native ecosystem or ecosystems. We're gonna discuss how they evolved, how they are similar, how they are different, what is the state of the community, and so I invited two podcasters, two technology commentators, Jack more on React side, Simon more on React Native side, to kind of hash out all of the different...
Hash it out. Which one's better?
Yeah. So maybe you can introduce yourselves better than I can introduce you.
All right. Well, I'll go first. I'm Jack Herrington. I'm a principal full stack engineer, so I mostly work on the web. I was the principal full stack engineer over at Walmart Labs as we did our React Native React transition, and then over at Nike doing the same sort of thing. And as part of that, I did a lot of education. I think as you get into like principal engineering, you do a lot more education and stuff like that. And so I started my own YouTube channel called Blue Collar Coder. We've got 180,000 subscribers now. Yeah. And I know it's really going really well. We talk about all kinds of stuff, including every once in a while, React Native. So, but a lot of React.
I'm Simon Grimm. I don't have a long CV like Jack has, but I've been in the cross-platform space for a very long time, and that probably qualified me for the stream. So I'm the creator of Galaxies.dev, an online school focused entirely on React Native. And also, I can't beat Jack, but I'm close to 100K on YouTube. Woo! So, that's getting really excited.
Oh, yeah. No, you get your plaque and all that. That's getting great.
It's not a competition.
No, it isn't.
But it is. But that's okay.
A tiny bit. I'm jealous of the background thing you got. I do have my own podcast about React Native called Rocket Ship as well. And as I said, I've been doing cross-platform stuff since 2013, actually. I looked it up. Actually did my bachelor thesis on like some weird Cordova. No, it wasn't even Cordova. It was pre-Cordova days. And then went with Ionic and Angular and Capacitor. I checked out Flutter, and ultimately I arrived for React Native. So I've been through it all. And so that's the reason why I know and love things about React Native and know why it's probably the best thing around right now.
And Simon, don't feel bad about your credentials, because I looked up your YouTube channel just today, and you have two. The podcast one is active since maybe last year, right? Mm-hmm. But the other one, you have videos from 9 years ago.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
This guy was creating videos for the past 10 years.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a good thing, because I've seen channels come up last year and they're at about like 200K subscribers, and I've been doing videos for 10K years. I mean, it has been a slow grind, but I'm all about consistency and just doing the good work. I'm not polarizing like other creators, so I stick to what I know.
Smack there.
I just had a video about I tried to be as unbiased as possible about React Native versus Flutter. Impossible. Look at the comments and you just want to turn them off.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, I don't think there is any unbiasing on that one. Yeah.
We will definitely link both of your channels and both of your podcasts, because Jack has a podcast as well. Maybe I will introduce myself. I'm a huge fan of both of you. I watch and listen to your podcast, to your videos, maybe not to all of them, but to some of them definitely. And I've been at Callstack for the past 3 years. I hosted the React Native Show podcast, and this is the first episode of the same podcast with a new name and with a slightly bigger focus. So
a universal focus.
Universal focus, yeah. Hopefully this can attract more viewers and more listeners, and we can get to 100K as well. So
absolutely.
I love the naming, by the way. It is, I can't believe actually somebody hadn't taken that before. React Universe, it just works. It really works. And it's because React, I mean, it is a universe at this point. You look at any other framework and it's like, wow, then you cannot do the combination of what React and React Native can do. You can take the same code base and have it working on, web and mobile and command line and desktop and TVs. I mean, it can literally be
PlayStation
anywhere. Yeah, exactly. Tell me another framework that can do that.
I actually had this discussion just yesterday where we were discussing how to approach a single developer from React or from React Native. And it's you can just tell them that you are you are not a mobile developer, you are not a web developer, you are one step from becoming, if you think about yourself as a mobile developer with React Native, you are one step from calling yourself web developer as well, TV developer as well. Just try your application on different platform, and with no or little work, it will just start working magically. Maybe not. It will not be production ready with this.
Yeah. Okay.
It will start working most of the times.
Yeah. I mean, you can basically take all the component kind of, that structure of components obviously works across everything. The hooks now work across, everything. Have been up for a long time. You can think about all the state management logic, the API access. It all works universally, which is honestly bonkers. Like think about 10 years ago, that was a dream, right? We were happy just to work on every browser symmetrically. That was the big aspiration at that time.
But this is such a great segue to our episode. So maybe let's go back 10 years ago and let's maybe lay some ground, how it all started. How I have a metaphor for this. I'm not sure if we'll be using this throughout the episode, but just hear me out. And if you feel it, play along. So I see it as 10 years ago, 11 years ago, 2013, we had this field of software development, and there were some trees, some animals, some grass in it. And then the one small tree started growing, tree called React. And then 2 years into that process, this tree gave birth to a branch called React Native. And then for the past 10 years, those branches, those trees grew and accumulated a lot of different things. So I want to discuss with you today, how they grew closely, how they grew apart sometimes. What are the similarities in community, in libraries, in technologies that we all use and love and maybe hate on React side, on React Native side. And then at the end of the episode, maybe we will hopefully get to some conclusion why it is how it is today, and where do we see it going forward? What do you think?
I do like the analogy, and I think it's kind of fitting. Yeah, we had this little tree, and actually if you zoom out a bit, you're going to see a whole lot of other trees, like the Angular tree and the Vue tree, but for some reason, the React tree just had the best stuff, the best soil probably. So if we stick to that. Yeah. And as you said, React Native became a branch of that tree, which also shows that React Native wouldn't have been possible without React in the first place. So we couldn't have started with React Native and then invent React at some point. That just wouldn't have worked. So,
and let's ask the question why, right?
Well, yeah, I think the fundamental difference, just at a high level, between React and something like, let's say Angular, is that from the very beginning, React was like, okay, we are a Vue library. That is us. We're not going to go into the realm of being everything. We're not going to handle your data modeling. We're not going to handle all of it. Whereas Angular was more of a complete solution. Hey, we're going to give you everything. It's going to have all of the bits you need to build an app in it. And that was kind of a curse and a blessing. And I think what it did was it kind of offloaded a lot of, for React, the necessity to go and create your own state manager or take one off the shelf or mix and match tools to build an application, essentially created that necessity for an ecosystem. Right. Yeah. And that's the fundamental difference between, I would say, that the big tree of React and the smaller trees of Vue. And
something that you said 5 minutes ago was that a few years ago, we were trying to target all browsers. So in a way, web framework or web UI library, let's not go into that, but in a way, web framework had to be cross-platform almost from the beginning to address all of those different browsers. And then having JavaScript and all of the developers from web being able to target native is an easier task to ask than the other way around, than maybe Java or Objective-C developers from native world starting targeting other platforms, because it's not as not as natural on those like native platforms to look broader. It's natural for web developers maybe to look at other techniques and other frameworks and mix and match. What do you think?
That's a great point, right? Because you're naturally gearing yourself towards, i.e., whatever's out at the time, Chrome, Firefox, the usual suspects, right? Yeah, absolutely.
But it's probably also worth pointing out that React Native didn't came into being because we had React, and then people thought, hey, let's just use React and do this React Native thing. Actually, the reason was more that like native development at that point, Swift wasn't even a thing. It was Objective-C and Java. It was just trash. Like, it was slow. It was unbelievable slow. Like, I mean, it is still today, if you use Xcode, if you like make changes to your code, you have to redeploy to your simulator unless you're using like a playground. And people like students using web development, live reload, and they're like, what? So it was more born from like this, hey, native development sucks, and React, this is kind of cool. Let's do something that we can also use on native. So it's just cool to see that was in like 2015 that people at that point, like at Meta and Facebook, already thought this React thing is kind of stable. Let's just use it for this. And, I mean, that has been like 9 years ago now.
And they made a fantastic architectural choice, which was to separate the renderer, in this case, the React DOM renderer, from the React core itself. And it was a subtle thing in the beginning that we didn't have that. But what it added, and the initial kind of outputs of that were just kind of crazy. I remember one person was like had it for like a React DOM for like IoT stuff, so you could like control little motors and stuff. Like, okay, I guess that's a thing. Like, I think Ken Wheeler was like controlling a crossbow in his backyard with like, of course he was with React. But that separation of those two things essentially enabled React Native, because then you could say, oh, cool. Well, now we can go and render to native views as opposed to rendering to React or to DOM elements in a browser. And there's a huge, like a tiny little architectural shift, like not tiny, obviously. I mean, it's a huge amount of work to make that happen. But
we wrote repository.
Right. And that's one of the cool things about React, I think, is how many major shifts we've seen like that, which is really unusual in a library, in a library and ecosystem of React's size. Is this number of those. But that was the first one, I would say, that really, and that enabled that, and the birthing of that second tree or whatever, the second branch.
Going back to the analogy, that actually happened in 2015, the same year that React Native came about. And that could have been coincidence, because like in my research, I talked with some folks at Callstack, and I haven't checked myself, but as far as I got to know, React, like you said, Jack, React and React DOM were like one repository, one package. And then around 2015, that one root, that one tree split out not only React Native, but also React DOM and like regular React. So we have React Core that React Native and React JS, I guess, uses. And then we have these two huge branches, and React Web obviously is the biggest one, the React JS. And this is, I think, inconvenient for React Native developers that React is primarily attached to web. When people say React, mostly they mean React Web, React JS on web, and not React as a meta language, not React as a way of writing code for all of those platforms. That's what React Native means where it's not necessarily native all of the times because we have things like React Native Web.
Right. Yeah. Because that doesn't get confusing. I think that's actually, but understand, I think there was some really, one of the surveys or something like that showed that there had been a lot of developers just in web in general who React was their entry point into just web coding at all, right? So this is the first time that they're ever coding. Coding in general. Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. And so, I mean, how, like they wouldn't, I totally get that they'd be like, yeah, just React is web, right? That's just a simplification thing that because there's so much going on, so much you have to learn to understand all this stuff that one simplification is enough for them.
So like I understand web and native, both of those words come with its own platform knowledge. So web comes with CSS. Just like knowing CSS is a huge thing. Like I don't think people coming to know programming with React as its first step, they don't know CSS. They get to know JavaScript and React a way of working on components and not CSS. And mobile is the same. You have to know at least expo tooling, right?
Yeah.
To try out React in and make it render something on some screen.
Yeah, I mean, talking about that, React Native has come a long way in making that a lot easier, especially thanks to Expo. It's like running 2 or 3 commands. I think, Jack, you said like a couple of weeks ago you built some React Native apps, and like what was your feeling of getting into that now?
Oh yeah,
everything was great actually until I went off the reservation. Right, maybe that's the thing about these frameworks.
That's where it gets funny.
That's where it gets fun, right? Is everything's great until you're like, ooh, I want to push it just a little bit more. So I was doing an AI application. So I was doing local first AI. And so I was bringing in the Onyx driver for Onyx AI models. The moment that you kind of get off the reservation, it starts getting a little hairy. But there's so much that's in that Expo framework, like in the Expo ecosystem. An example was that like the camera, has like barcodes and face scanning stuff built into it. And you're like, whoa. And so the amount of stuff that you can do kind of just in the Expo ecosystem, if you don't go off the range, is amazing. And the kind of apps you can build are phenomenal. So Expo is the way to go. And that's one of the cool things about the native side, I would say, just in terms of their ecosystem, is that when they came out with, at ReactConf 2024 saying Expo was the way to go on native, folks were like, yeah, okay, cool. Right, great. Whereas like on the website, when they changed out the docs said like, don't use Create React App, use, Next.js. And then they also said like Remix and a couple other frameworks, but like the fact that they even said React in Next.js was like, oh, that's huge. Everybody's freaking out and everything. And I think that's actually kind of a core difference between those two communities, is like React Native kind of like default is in the positive space, where in the React web world, I think default can be kind of a little bit of negative.
Well, I see it as a similarity on React core team side and React Native core team side. So React made that decision to officially say you should use React with a framework, and here are a bunch of frameworks like Remix and Next.js. And I think it was like 2 years ago, Jack.
I didn't consider that all that controversial, but people lost their minds over that.
Let me tell you, like announcing Expo as a framework, as the framework, is a huge thing in React Native community, because we don't have choice right now. We don't have any other frameworks. On the web, there are, I don't know, like 7? Or like Next.js and Remix, obviously, like 2 biggest one, with Next.js being the king. But on mobile side, there is Expo, and there is no contender, not even a small contender, but no contender. So like this is a similarity on the trajectory of like both Reacts, but on the side of choice, we don't have any.
I mean,
is that a problem? Like, I asked naively.
it's like the announcement of Expo is now the way to go. It's pretty much like if you're at an Apple event and they say, we now have a camera app, and everyone's like, yeah, that's it. And like, that's the same for, say, Expo is the thing for React Native. Everyone in React Native was anyway using it already. And we kind of knew that Expo is the thing since like probably 2 or 3 years. Let's not talk about Expo pre-2020 probably. There were some issues back then, but it's just the main thing right now. And coming back to what you said, like the differences between native and web, I think if people enter on one end or the other end, they are really very different platforms. And as you said, Jack, like the communities, I think there was like a survey last year from, I can't remember exactly, but like the overall sentiment of the React Native folks was like, yeah, it's great. Like React Native is great. That was the basic assumption. If you look at a React service, it's more like, it's not really going in the right direction. We got too much of this and we got too much of that. So I don't know what's like fundamentally different in the communities. I don't know. But like in the React Native world, everything is like, Rose, it's all good and we are all cool. So and it feels really refreshing to be in it, to be honest.
I do wonder if that's reality or that's like, unfortunately, like tech Twitter. To be honest, like, because if you look at like the State of React survey that just came out, like, oh my gosh, a couple weeks ago, but man, a little slow. But it was really interesting. They had like 13,000 respondents. And then there was a couple of sections on like pain points, which I thought was very interesting. Okay, okay, cool. Let's talk about where the pain points are. And like one of them was like pain points around hook, and of course like hooks and like use effect came in as number one. But number one in that case was literally like, I think 3% of people even listed that. Yeah. And so it's the numbers are astonishingly low. That means basically 97% of people, of respondents, couldn't find anything bad to say about hooks.
They don't see anything.
They just use it. Yeah. It works. It's good. It's like if you listen to tech Twitter, you think that the world is on fire and everything's terrible. And when in reality, there's 97% of engineers out there who are like, this just works for me. I don't know what the problem is. So it is kind of funny.
Maybe I can try to answer would be not the best word to describe it, but maybe I can try to add some context to what you said about like difference in communities. So, and Jack helped me out here from React side, but from React Native side, I see our community as really, really engaged. And this is from the beginning, from like 2015. Like those people that actually own my company, Callstack, and other companies like Software Mention, Infinite Red, those people were in the community from the very beginning. And from the very beginning of React Native community was very much involved. And I think this is because on mobile side, mobile development was still quite fresh there. There was a need for engaged people that can build up the ecosystem, build the libraries, build the support for the big companies that use it. And we still specialize in React Native. On React side, I feel like the diversity there came about only a few years ago. And before that, everyone involved at React was working at Meta. And only when Next.js started hiring some of those people, that community started to grow somehow, to be like more involved. What do you think about that?
Jack, you want to go first?
Yeah. Okay. So here's my thought on this one. So I actually did try React Native early on. I'm the guy that gets in there and tries new things all the time. And I got to tell you, early on in the early days, it was hairy. It was like really hard to get stuff to work. You really had to like dig into it and figure it out and be like, ooh, wow, I'm getting this weird Xcode error. What does that even mean? And then you really had to dig in and try it out and get your hands dirty to get a React Native app working. And that, whereas on the website, it was a very polished, very streamlined experience. Everything, if you did the create React app thing or the next app thing, like you'd follow a tutorial and it would probably work pretty much end to end. You know, you connect to your database, everything's clean and smooth and works, and you almost never get an error message or that kind of stuff. So you're not getting your hands dirty as much. And I think so the expectation on the React Native side is if it works, it's like, wow, it worked on the first go. That's amazing.
Yes.
Like, wow, I didn't have to get my hands dirty. I can now like whatever, right? And then on the website, it's like, if it doesn't work, you're pissed off. You're like, wait a second, this was supposed to work. Yeah, whatever. And I liken it to like the whole sandbagging thing. I think if you've been in engineering for long enough, it's like, okay, so I know this thing is going to take an hour, but I'm going to tell my product manager it's going to take 4 hours, right? In the web world, you can mess around for 3 hours, go working out, do a hike, whatever you want to do, you know, make dinner or whatever. And then the extra hour, like you get at the end, because you know it's going to work, right?
It feels like we've chosen the wrong platform.
Right. On React Native, you can't do that. You do that work up front because you never know. An hour might turn into 5 hours on you. But yeah, so you got to sandbag. You got to do your work at the beginning and then sandbag at the end, which is always good. By the way, if you're listening to this and you want to know the sandbagging strategy, always work up front, sandbag later.
So are you saying that maybe on the React side, there was not the necessity from the community to come in and pitch in to...
Yeah, there was an expectation that stuff would just work.
Yeah.
Whereas on the React Native side, there is no such expectation.
I do agree to Jake's take on like certain things might take a bit longer in React Native land, but I do have another view on this, which comes like based on the 10 years of doing cross-platform stuff. And that is, I don't know why and how to explain this, but I think building a mobile app sparks a lot more joy than building a web application. And this might like fire Jack a bit up because he's into the web stuff. But honestly, personally for me, and I've seen it for others as well, I can buy a domain, I can spin up a Next.js or Astro thing, and it's up in 5 minutes. And I'm like, yeah, cool. Okay, let's go out for a walk. But if I do like a native app, and I go through like the submission to iOS and Android, and I fix the bugs, and it gets live, I'm like, wow, I'm telling all my friends, leave a fake 5-star review on the app. This is my app in the App Store. You can download it. And I've seen this with other people as well. Like, just, I don't know what it is, but having the app like on this device here in my pocket that I have built, it is a different feeling to me than building a website. I can't quantify this, like, it's hard.
There's a lot more integration points, right? It's like it can use your camera, it can use, your mic, it can tap into like local resources and do stuff on your device, and your device is very personal, Yeah. And so you have a much deeper integration with the device and with the person's experience. And plus, I think a lot of folks, I'm just out visiting my sister, and she only has an iPad and a phone. It's like those are her devices. She shouldn't have a desktop anymore. And so I don't know, the web experience, she mostly just uses apps. And yeah, I think you're right. What really good integrated app, and I've seen a bunch that aren't, but the really good ones that really work within the ecosystem of the phone, they feel good. Yeah. And you can do that on React Native. That's the thing. I think people are. I think we're certainly that. I'd love to hear more about like where you think the native developers are in their perception of React Native, because when we first started trying to roll this out at Walmart, let me tell you, it was hairy. Like the React Native, in particular, the iOS developers were like, I ain't having this. Like, this is not. Nope.
They're taking our jobs.
They're taking our jobs. And then I can remember specifically, it was all about the speed of lists. Like if the list speed, like if I could flick up and I wouldn't see any flicker or something, I don't even know. I couldn't even tell. They would like, oh, look, it's so laggy. And I'm like, what? Doesn't look laggy to me.
I have a pitch for this. So it's actually, I come from Android developer. I used to be an Android developer because before I
you used to be yeah.
Sorry?
You're used to being
I think you still are. If you're doing React Native, you're basically
you know what? I'm not sure I'm still am. I don't know. Like, okay. I'm more of a web developer now, React developer, than Android developer probably. If I had to go into like very modern Android stack, I would probably have to like do some reading before I can actually contribute to modern stack Android development. But I was going to say that, and yeah, like when I switched, a few of my Android friends were like, React Native, nah, this is just like a toy. You shouldn't do that. But like, I have a pitch for this, and it's about like addressing the seniority. Because like, if you are a senior developer, like you don't really should think about your product in a tools perspective way.
Yeah.
You should think about your product in a best value perspective way.
In a business way.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
if Android gets you the best value because you need that speed of the lists, or you need that native functionality that I cannot maybe hook into from React Native, that's not anymore true, but whatever. If you need that in your business, yeah, in your product, that's the way you should go. But most of the time, it's not about the last 5% of performance. It's not about the last 5% of native experience. It's about making time to market half and making your team cost maybe third or something like that.
Yep.
And maybe integrating your testing and integrating your pipelines, integrating your delivery, integrating your customer experience.
Right, sharing code between the web, the web framework and the web side, and then the React Native side.
Especially
huge
if you have
advantages.
a web page, and if that web page is written in React and you don't have React Native app, you are just throwing money out of the window.
Yeah.
So I've been into all the frameworks. So I've been into Ionic, Godot, Capacitor, Flutter. I've done Swift. I've done Objective-C, React Native. So I've seen it from all the angles. And to be honest, like they all exist because they all serve a purpose. There is a project in this world where Flutter is the best choice. And there's also a project in this world where Capacitor is the best choice. And I could actually give you some reasons. But the thing is that I noticed over the years, though, I've been doing a lot of Ionic, and I've really liked the HTML approach. And honestly, those apps are good. But when it comes down to like just the basics or the fundamentals, React Native just checks all the boxes. React Native just gets it right in the important places because like the abstraction layer is in the right place. React Native renders to those native controls on iOS and Android. Your app will always feel good. You got like almost perfect performance. Yeah, maybe Flutter is 5% better, but who cares? Like most apps, nobody cares about that performance. But yeah, if you're really like Walmart and our list is so important, then yeah, maybe React Native does not have the best list implementation yet after 10 years. I don't know.
It does. It's fine. It's fine.
We got Flash list.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
All these frameworks are good and they serve a purpose, but I think React Native is currently in 2024 just the answer to most like questions for like, should we use technology X? Yeah, it should be React Native. And you should have really good reasons for not using React Native today.
And like one thing that is very distinctive in React Native, and this is because it uses React, is because it's future-proof. It's if you watched the WWDC a few months ago, Apple conference, and they've announced that they will be implementing something AI on your like iPhone controls, and you get that in React Native for free.
Yeah,
you use that controls as well. So
yeah.
We have it already. Like when Apple does it, like your apps will have it in React Native. Whereas in Flutter,
Flutter. Yeah.
From React perspective, you can count on that language to stick around because React community is 20 times bigger than React Native. So like React community will be there to support your language, to support your internals, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas
and not just stick around, but get better. Yeah, that's the thing that blows my mind is that after 10 years, we're still getting major platform upgrades in React. It's like, what other, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've always seen, the big framework comes out, it has a really good run of a couple years, and then it starts tailing off as some like upstart competitor comes in and does that plus a lot more. And React, it just keeps going. It just keeps getting better. And you're like, And I see the same things in the community every time. It's like, oh, what is this hooks thing? This is terrible. And then 2 years later, they're like, I can't live without hooks. Hooks are the best things. How did React exist without hooks? Kind of thing. So the same thing with RSCs, right? Everybody's like, oh, this looks like PHP in my React. And then, I think as we're seeing, more frameworks bring it in, and we're seeing amazing stuff like the React 2024 talks just got released. You should go watch them. And one of them is on universal React server components, where the guy, Evan's taking, Evan Bacon's taking RSCs and using those and compiling those on the server, I guess, and then sending them off to the client, and it's doing generative AI UI work. It's bonkers. And you're like, this is React. We've been doing this for 10, 12 years now, and it's just getting better.
This talk is mind-blowing. This is still experimental. It doesn't exist in real world. It exists on Evan's computer with experimental version of expose, routing, all of that. But this, I hate to call this part React Native, because this is universal React. This is React that we talk about, not React Native. It's no longer React Native. Those components work on all of the platforms. And RSCs, on the other hand, are React concept, but mostly talked about in a web context. I mean. So what Evan did on that talk is to show, okay, so you've been discussing RSCs for the past 2 years now. Let me show you how universal that concept is. Because you've been discussing them in the web context using HTML streaming and all that parts, like Next.js, remix parts. But here how it can look and how it will look, hopefully, in Expo in pure universal way.
Yeah, two things on this. First, actually, in the next Expo SDK 52, I just heard the other day, Evan implemented some sort of streaming, which is like the precursor to getting React Native server components to work. So it's still experimental, but we're moving towards it.
Right. What's experimental this week is, deployed a month from now.
I mean, I talked to Evan and Charlie at the App.js, and they said, we're working on something for it because, of course, you need hosting for the server components. There is actually a server involved that can't run in our application with React Native. So I think he said something like end of 2024 or 2025 for that. But that's still pretty soon. And at the same time, he just said the differences between web and native. We haven't really talked about this, but we have the different renderers because on React Native, we render things like a scroll view or a view or a text, whereas on the web, we have div, h1, h2, p, whatever. And that's also interesting, with the React Native strict DOM package, these things are also now coming together. That was announced a couple of months ago, maybe a half a year ago. And it is also one of these mind-blowing things where I actually built a React Native app that it looked mostly like HTML stuff, it was HTML.div, HTML.h1, but you could inspect that application and it was rendering the native views. You could use Xcode and this cool, I don't know if you've seen this. This is really impressive stuff. When in Xcode what is it, expand or explode view, and it shows you all these native views? You got that from HTML, basically.
Lookup something,
Yeah, and this, it was super React Native strict DOM is super experimental and super early days, but it is...
And super terrible name, just FYI. My God.
Yes, but
what the heck?
I actually I have it on my list of topics to discuss with you guys, the strict DOM. And yes.
Amazing, but terrible name.
But, so what it is, in my opinion, and maybe in the opinion of people that actually presented to the ReactConf, this is taking the React and React Native, taking the React Native and just pushing the boundary more towards the web.
Correct.
Towards web compatibility.
Yeah.
So that it's easier for everyone to understand. Maybe I don't like it. It looks strange for me because I'm used to having texts and views and all of that in my React Native app. But at the same time, I see a huge value in unification. I see huge value in having both Reacts coming together in React Strict DOM.
Yeah, and I think you're seeing it as at the raw level, which isn't very appealing, and I grant you that. But I think most people are going to work like with a Tama GUI or, another framework that is universal, and that's going to abstract away all that stuff. And so for them, they're going to be at the framework level, at that GUI level all the time. So they're just going to be working with those, buttons and titles and headings and,
Yeah, on the components level, right? Because this is React. We don't work with P's and A's, we work with links and we work
right. Exactly. Yeah. So you're not going to have to deal with that stuff. You're just seeing right now the kind of raw stuff that like library developers are going to have to deal with. And then, you're going to be writing code that can run anywhere and universally, right? And not only that, but like the layout is going to work too. They're normalizing layout across these things, and that is just so cool.
I think it's mind blowing. Like just thinking about like I write one code and it deploys a nice website and a nice app, but at the same time, I'm also like I've done a lot of native development, so there are things that just work different on native side.
Yeah.
Like in terms of just thinking about navigation and how some stuff works. So it's really hard to like think about how this could really come together. I don't know. You can do like Expo Web right now as well, which is funny because like we came to React Native and then we did React Native for the web. That whole thing is kind of, I don't know, crazy, but so you can technically do it, but you're probably, when you do this right now, you're not really getting the best out of web. You're really getting the best out of web if you use like Next.js probably for the next thing, and then for native you use Expo and you combine that in a
inline solid or something.
Like with a repository you have multiple applications inside. And
but
works.
If you look at it, the React Native for web was created by Nicholas. Nicholas now works at Meta on React Strict DOM. Like this guy. And I get what you're saying. Like we had React for web, then we had React Native, and then we are using React Native for web to target web. And this is like a lot of workarounds, and it's not really performant and all of that. But then when we're switching to be closer to web, you wouldn't have to use React Strict DOM for web on web because you'd have React DOM on web.
Okay, it is mind-bending. But take a step back for a second and think about how crazy it is to even be in a position where you have to have your mind bent this way. It's like, hey, you got this. Like React is the James Bond car that can like fly, go underwater, go into space.
Yeah.
It's like it's crazy. Like there's no other framework that even gets close to this. They're all like, back in like the world of dealing with, I don't know, state management and how to model services and stuff. And it's like, great, and we're out there like, okay, so what does it feel like to write one line of code that works across 5 different platforms? How do I even test that efficiently? What does the development experience feel like? And those are like these amazing problems that only React has, because and they're not even problems. They're more like just kind of DX issues that, is only enabled by the fact that we have this amazing framework that just is just incredibly advanced.
Yeah. You said it a couple of minutes ago that React is just like, React has won basically. For a while I was betting on Angular, but that just didn't work out. And then I thought SvelteKit might be the next big thing, so I used it for my main page. And maybe it's not the next big thing, and maybe Solid is also not the next big thing. It's just like all these cool things come up, but React just exists, and as Jack said, it keeps getting better. And the funny thing is, like you said, one step from React Native is React Web, or one step from React Web is React Native. But if you also take a step back, you're also in the JavaScript or TypeScript world. So technically, you're also very close, like one step to a full stack developer. Just do Node.js on the server. It's great. I've done it so many times. So you're like the real full stack developer from web to native to like everywhere. And just because you enter the React universe,
you can go do that. You can do React on the CLI, which I keep, is just mind blowing. It's like I can go and make, like, I can literally, I've seen games, CLI games like Rogue or whatever, and you're like, that's in React.
Well, don't forget about React Native Vision OS that Oscar from Callstack.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
This blew up. At some point, even though I'm not sure how many devices Apple sells, but at some point, that library had 7,000 downloads weekly, which is like more than React Native TV.
Wow. Okay.
Doesn't anymore, but like it's such a compliment to the technology that one person team, because Oscar created it almost himself, could work for a few months and then enable platform that wasn't even released yet on React Native that everyone just can use from now on. Yeah. So
we can, by the way, also build Mac apps and Windows apps, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just to complete the picture.
Yeah, I guess at the beginning of this episode, we should have...
It's a bit late now.
What React and React Native is and can do and what it does for you.
It can do all the things. It's universal.
It can do all of the things.
If isn't, I mean, let's be honest. Like, give me a UI where you can't use React. Any kind of UI. Like, I can't think of any.
Yeah, it's not just a really entertaining episode because we'll be just sitting here and like not coming up with anything.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, honestly, we probably can't build competitive games with React. We should use Unity for stuff like that, or really use Metal and like the native implementation.
Not like you shouldn't, but you can.
I mean, there has been, right? There was a guy who was at ReactConf who had built the game. Yeah, he's a guy like 2D side-scroller, 2D games nowadays are really in vogue. And I mean, dude, I built freaking Wordle in like 20 minutes with React. I mean, it's easy, right? Wordle blows up, man. Like, everybody plays Wordle.
I want to address something that Simon just said, to like take a step back and like go even higher from React and React Native world to like JavaScript world. Jack, on your podcast that I've listened to like just 2 days ago, you were discussing how React Query rebranded to Callstack Query because it's not React exclusive library anymore. So
right, yeah.
Things in React can grow, can get famous, can get really good, can be an industry standard for server state, and then grow out of React world and like be in its own category of tooling that React can use, but it can be used by other frameworks as well.
Yeah, crazy, right? And yeah, similar sort of thing in like the CSS world. You get, and that'll be interesting to see. Like, I guess there's React Native Wind now too. I mean, I was thinking about Tailwind and how that's become really universal and so quickly. By the way, oh my god, like how quickly Tailwind has taken off.
Native Wind is impressive, and I think it's another one of these things that will take off over the next years because everyone on the web knows Tailwind these days. So if these people then come to React Native and notice it is easy and notice they can use Tailwind, guess what? More people will use it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I want to actually stay in this level for a little bit because I have a good question for both of you. And it's related to what we've been discussing for the past 2 minutes. Coming to React ecosystem from web development, you see a different picture, you make different connections, you are used to different ways of doing things than coming from mobile development, from some other areas, like me, from Android. You come into React Native and you see different perspectives. So what do you think, how that impacts that person, like going forward, growing in the technology? Example. So going from web world using Tailwind, like you said, Simon, that person will look around and like find something that is similar to Tailwind and just start using this on native side. Someone coming from native side, maybe like me, will be surprised that not all of my favorite libraries exist on web. Yeah, and I will try to find some counterparts, some other things to use.
Personally, to me, that's actually the fun part of all this, is actually learning all of those new things and actually trying to get into that kind of, what is the way that React Native folks kind of look at this? And we call it idiomatic coding, right? Or, idiomatic design. Like, you want to follow the idioms of that space. And so I actually find that really cool and fun, because then maybe there's stuff that React Native is doing that I would want to pull back into my devs.
Yeah, and like cross-populate, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think there are probably two types of people. Like, there's the first type, which is like Jack, that's like, oh, cool, let's figure this out, and this, that. And then there's the second type of that, like, why is there no component for this? Why does the default button does not have a styling? Why is there nothing besides 5 core primitives in this? I will go back to whatever framework I used before. So, React Native can be confusing and challenging when you get started, but you got to bring some like enthusiasm to it. And like, sometimes you just need to dive into those stack traces, but you also do this on the web sometimes. You just like, there are different types of developers. Let's be honest. There's some like, oh, we got a red message. Let's put it on GitHub, or let's send an email to my favorite creator, who will then put it into Google and reply with them like the first link. There are different kinds of people in this world that will take.
I think that, just kind of getting way off the sort of central topic here, but like that to me is the big difference between like a junior developer and a senior developer, is that your junior developer, like, the moment they get stuck on stuff, they're going to like jump out and try and get some help or something like that. It's like, you really shouldn't do that. You really should spend the time, give yourself 10, 20, 30 minutes to try and puzzle out, like, what does that error message actually mean? Like, if it says this is null or undefined, like, you actually look at the code and actually like, okay, I thought that value wasn't null or undefined, and it turns out it is. Like, why is that? As opposed to like immediately taking a big old screenshot of your 55-inch monitor and dropping it on my Discord channel and being like, hey, make this code work for me. Like that's not a way to learn how to be an engineer at the end of the day. And I think that's actually, I wish maybe that folks would start with React Native, because in the React Native world, it is so like it's the expectation that you actually have to go through and try and figure this stuff out for yourself. Like, I was actually genuinely irked with myself that I couldn't figure out why I couldn't get the Android version of my app working, and I still can't.
With Expo, like the friction is no longer there for the most part, I would say. When I started with like regular React Native, with just bare bones React Native, it's intimidating to see different errors coming from different parts of your tool chain, and it can come from Gradle, which is, I don't even know what language Gradle is with Gradle.
It's written in hell. I don't know. It comes from there. I hate Gradle so much. I can't believe we're still using it, to be honest.
Isn't it Groovy or something?
Oh, God, I don't even know. Like, maybe it is. But then Groovy is a JVM language, so it's all the same thing.
Yeah.
Debugging has always been the biggest pain point in like the React Native state of whatever surveys. It's always debugging is like the first thing. Expo is making it better, but it's still not, like, it's just not comfortable for, if you work with React Native at Expo, as Jack said, it's all cool and like until you leave the nice path. And then you have to look into probably some Swift code. So you might have to set some breakpoints in a pre-build of your Swift code, and that isn't sexy probably. It also, honestly, like getting there and seeing that, oh, there's the problem in Swift, and then like finding a solution somewhere in Stack Overflow or GitHub is really rewarding, and that's really where you learn.
Right. Isn't that the thing? That is like, that's the dopamine rush of engineering, is like hitting that wall and then working your way through it and being like, oh yeah, look at me, I figured it out, yeah. And that's why I find, like, if you're just jumping on Discord or whatever with your thing, you're not going to get that. And I mean, I swear to you, there are some times when I jump into those questions because I'm like, ooh, I can't imagine how you got there. But I'm kind of curious, actually. Like, how did you mess this up so hard? And like, and then I jump into into myself. Like, oh wow, I did. Then I make a video out of it. You're like, as it turns out, you can create a memory leak by doing this incredibly, insanely ridiculous thing. Here's a clue. Don't do that.
Yeah, this is exactly like Jack, you said. This is how you learn. This is how you senior.
Exactly.
Spend time and you sweat, and then the dopamine that you have after solving this. I remember one thing, and Simon, maybe you had the same experience a few years ago when you had to add empty Swift file into your React Native project in order for some other library to start working on all of a sudden. And
because sure, of course you had to do that.
On top of that empty Swift file, we would all say, don't touch it.
Don't ever delete this file.
I know it's empty.
Don't even ask why it's here.
It's here for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think I haven't been there, but it definitely sounds like a React Native thing.
I need to research this because people will think that I don't know what I'm talking about. But like,
oh no, I'm 1,000% sure that happened. Believe me. Yeah.
Guys,
I'm kind of. Can I just jump on one thing though? Like, when it comes, was there a pain point for React Native around bit rot? Because what I find is I will make a React Native application 1 week, and then 3 weeks later, I'll, RMFR, node modules, reinstall, blah, 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 blah. And it just, boom, doesn't work. And you're like, what is going on? I haven't changed a line of code. And yet it just happens.
No, it doesn't just happen. It happens exactly when you press record, when you prepare the script before, and then you do the record as a content creator.
Yes. Oh, you're not wrong. Like this, literally, I had prepped my talk at Chain React, and I had the code working 5 days before, and then I wanted to be able to boot the app the morning. Yeah, they didn't show the app that day, and in the morning, I can't remember what it was, but it blew up, and it was something around like yarn incompatibility or something like that. But it was like, oh my god, how did I can't believe we're still here. Like this has been my experience with Expo and React Native the entire time of these 10 years. Has been like this massive bit rotting.
It's a tool chain issue. The tool chain is so huge that any change in that Xcode is like that. If you update the Xcode, like you have to fix something in React Native or any somewhere there. I have the same. If I create some kind of workshop for someone and this workshop works perfectly fine in January, if I try to deliver that workshop during the summer, I need to update the dependencies. I need to verify that it actually works because things break and it's mostly Xcode.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's always that's the local culprit.
The solution for this would be to create a container with stable environment and don't touch it. Don't update anything on that container. And that's probably how you can fix that.
Okay. Yeah. The other day I updated my Node version globally to Node 22, and suddenly nothing worked. And then I reverted it, and still nothing worked. And the thing is, you get, this comes back to poor debugging. The error codes you get, the build just failed. It's not telling you, hey, you have Node 22. Maybe just use an old version of Node. This is just the senior developer stuff that you're learning after a year. Maybe I'm too close to the front of new versions. Let's just go back 4 versions and everything will be fine.
Yeah, I think there's definitely, that was actually one of the things I ran into with React Native was where I have a feel for web development about, okay, with Next, I see this kind of error, and this basically just means you remove node modules, you remove the next version, you reinstall, you rerun, everything's cool. Occasionally the system just gets into an issue with that. But then, and I just have a gut feel. Oh, I've seen that error before. I know what that means. That's one of the things that I don't have with React Native. Like, I just don't have that kind of gut sense of like, ooh, that's the blah, 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 blah error. And so, there's a lot of time to get that familiarity.
But it comes with experience. Like,
sure, absolutely.
React Native works also, if you saw that error 100 times, you know that you don't have maybe provisioning profile in your Xcode. Like,
exactly.
I know. Yeah. And I know what to do with it. And
you know what a provisioning profile is.
Yeah. You have to open Xcode and just click enable automatic citing or something like that. And like new people coming into React Native, they do not know that. Like they will try to build that project through CLI and they will fail. And so I guess that's and this is
why I don't do React Native content all that much. Because man, if I put up a repo of code, like, and then I link to it in my YouTube description, and somebody like, I know I'm going to get people like comments later, this doesn't work because blah 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 blah. And like, I don't want to go back. I know I had forgotten that code even exists. So
how do you deal?
Good luck with that.
I ignore the comments. No. No, it just happens. Like, it's a problem of tech in general. Like, even if you use Angular and then the next Angular version, everything was outdated. It's just the life of a content creator. Probably you can't create evergreen content unless you talk about, I don't know.
I just think that React Native would be particularly bad, though. Like, there's definitely a problem with regular web, but it's way worse with React Native.
We're still in beta. It's not yet version 1.
The tool chain is much bigger. But on the other hand, I wanted to talk about this, but we are closing on this episode. Just one more topic, guys, and then I promise we will close this. So one more topic. If you are a React developer, you are one step from being able, if you want, to write native Android, native iOS, native macOS, native Windows even. So you have that possibility. You don't have to like start a new project, Hello World, exclusively in Objective-C. You can start up your weather application, to-do application, and step by step, learn how to do all of those different technologies. And if you want to put your to-do app on the web and learn how to use CSS with it or any other like web-specific concept, you can do that. You don't have to do that. So like you have superpower on both the ease of use. You can just stick to JavaScript and don't look anywhere else. But you have also the flexibility to go deeper if you want. Yeah.
I mean, this is probably why React has ultimately won and why it's become such a big universe, because you can use it in so many different ways and there's like space for everyone. Like maybe some people really love to build mobile apps, so cool, they can get into it. Some people might love like TV apps or building stuff like that. So there's a place in the whole ecosystem for them. And there's of course the big majority of people doing web development, and welcome. Yeah, React on the web is big because every company in the world is using React. So yeah, I mean, that's the cool thing. Like, there's a place for everyone in the React ecosystem.
Yeah, I think when I think, we're talking about content creators. When I think about the people who watch my videos, like I tend to put my videos. The person I have in mind is like either a person in a big company or a solopreneur, right? Somebody who's like, I got this great idea for service. And we're going to go out. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do it in my garage, and I'm going to go make, get my first, VC money because I'm going to have something and React. And that's the way to do it, because as a solopreneur, you can use one framework and you can get, as we said, web and native and web and mobile and desktop and the whole shoot and match. That is possible. And very easy to do in React. It is not, and that is not the case. I can't think what any other framework that even gets anywhere close to that.
And on that positive note, unfortunately, we have to end. I had such a blast talking with you guys today. I think I'm going to invite you more.
Please. Happy to be there.
Much. So this has been the first episode of the renamed React Native Show podcast, that is React Universe on Air. I'm Łukasz Chludziński, with me Jack Herrington and Simon Grimm. Thank you guys so much. We've been talking today about the React and React Native ecosystem or ecosystems, how they grew, how they are similar, how they are different, what are the different opinions and weird quirks around the debugging, for example. If you like the episode, please subscribe, leave us a note, what we should be doing better, what should we stop doing, and if you want Jack and Simon to come by more often. Thank you so much, guys.
React Universe, let's go.
It was a pleasure. Yes.